Steve again here at Space 58. Just finished another weekend project of installing battery chargers for our RV to charge our batteries as we're traveling down the road. That gets to be pretty important to us as we're traveling. We're running a residential refrigerator, and even though we have solar and even though we have lithium batteries, if I can charge up the batteries while we're traveling, fully charge those up, that's a win for us, and especially if it's a time where there's not a lot of sun out. Our plan is to do a lot of boondocking, places where we have absolutely no hookups. We live strictly off the solar and the batteries, and again, we're going to have to top them off as we move from place to place. And many are thinking, wait a second, our RV already charges, the batteries already charge while we're traveling. We plug in our RV to the pigtail of our tow vehicle, and it charges. And you're right, there's a trickle charge that goes into your RV, and maybe 5 amps at the most. What we wanted to do is boost that up and get up to 30 amps coming into our RV, really if we can top off the batteries. And in order to do that, it takes really a couple of things. One, some heavier gauge wire, and also a DC to DC charger. So what we did is we ordered some 6-gauge wire, wanted something a little bit heavier duty. We ordered a fuse, a circuit breaker that will attach right to our battery where our alternator comes in, and then an Anderson plug in the back of the truck next to where the 7-pin for our fifth wheel plugs in, and then our chargers that we put in the generator bay at the front of our fifth wheel. So we'll take a look at this installation. We start up under the hood, and you can see where we have the circuit breaker attached to the battery, and the wires that come into that also come from the alternator, so we want to get maximum charging output. And our vehicle has a smart alternator which will detect how much juice really needs to be put out, and our regulators will actually regulate that. From there you have a 6-gauge wire that runs through the truck and comes out in the bed of the truck next to the 7-pin connector that we use for hooking up our fifth wheel, and we have a 50 amp Anderson connector there. Then inside the generator bay, we actually have the other end of the Anderson plug that comes on in and goes into another circuit breaker. Again, we want a little bit of redundancy there. And then goes down to 2 15 amp DC to DC battery chargers. And those are running in parallel. You'll see the wires that kind of split off and go into each one of those. And then from each of those battery chargers, it goes to our inverter, which is just a convenient place for us to hook that up because that's a direct link back to our batteries. And the inverters will actually regulate the charging regimen going back in. So for us, it's a win. If we're driving down the road, we might as well be charging up our batteries as well. One of the things you might notice on our chargers is we actually have a 24-volt battery system inside our RV. We did that mainly for the wire sizing and all for the solar panels coming down. So our chargers, our DC to DC chargers, are actually 12 volt coming in to 24 volts going into the battery system. And again, it was a weekend project for us. We'll see how well it works. I've done one dry run here at the RV park, and it seems to be working fine. Looking forward to actually hitting the road with that, and again, having a little bit of redundancy for charging the batteries. So for us, if we're sitting somewhere, primarily if we're boondocking, we end up having the solar, and we have 240 amps or 240 watts of solar up on the roof, down to solar regulator, and then into the batteries. We'll have our truck generator, alternator be able to charge through our DC to DC chargers, and if all else fails, we have a generator that we can crank up as well. But the whole idea is not to use any of that, but to use solar and to be able to top off the batteries while we're actually driving. Anyway, if you have questions on that, please feel free to either leave a message here on this page or stop by Space 58. Be glad to show you the system, maybe even share a cheap glass of wine with you. Anyway, happy travels. We'll see you later.